This is the Voyage Report podcast, where you get the scoop on travel. Now, the editor-in-chief of the Voyage Report, Mark Albert.
Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about making family travel not just fun, but educational and an amazing learning experience for your kids. Our guest today knows all about this as the founder of Our Edventures, a website full of educational tips for family travel. Diane Savolka is joining us today via Skype from her home in San Diego, California. Diane, welcome to the Voyage Report podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm looking so forward to hearing all of your tips. I think a lot of families have the challenge of trying to make the trip interesting and a learning experience for their kids. So let's start off here. What has been your biggest discovery while traveling?
Well, for us, I would say the biggest discovery, and maybe this is for me specifically, but traveling with my family has really become my happy place. And I have found it's the best way for us to spend quality time together.
So more so than at home or at an extracurricular event, you find that on the road away from home is where you guys can bond the most.
Absolutely. And I think that's for a variety of reasons. My husband works from home. I don't work, but when I'm home, I'm very busy with, all of the responsibilities. There's laundry, there's driving everybody to their activities. The kids have homework and responsibilities with school and extracurricular activities. And so we find that when we are on the road together, everybody can just kind of leave all of those things behind and just really focus on being together, having fun together. It feels less stressful, and it's just a great way to spend time together.
Being in the moment as opposed to running from one event to the other.
Yes.
And what's the favorite place in all of your travels, the favorite place that you've been to?
Well, that really depends on who you ask. If you ask me, I'm going to say something in Europe. I absolutely love quaint villages. I love history and culture, ancient sites and sidewalk cafes. And, so places like, I really like the little spots. So places like Hallstatt, Austria, or Trogir, Croatia, little places like that. That's what I'm going to say. If you ask my husband or my boys, I have two boys, they're going to absolutely say something that has to do with warm tropical weather, nature, all of those things. And probably their favorite to date would be Bora Bora in French Polynesia.
Well, Diane, I'm going to side with you. I love the history and culture and sort of embedding yourself in a little European quaint town. I love that.
Yes.
What's the next place that you're traveling to?
Well, we are heading to Iceland in a couple of weeks.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. We did a 6-day road trip, rented a car, and it's an island, so you can't drive too far, but it was so fantastic. What are you looking forward to there?
Well, nature, we are kind of doing the same thing. We're renting a car, and it's going to be a 5-day road trip. And so we are just looking forward to seeing these amazing places we're seeing pictures of. Really excited about that. And we're going to talk about education, I'm sure, but I'm in the process right now of pulling out all of our books about Vikings and Leif Erikson and puffins and whales. And, so there's just so much there. It's very rich. And we're just looking forward to seeing and learning all that we can.
And listeners, Iceland is one of our favorite destinations. We've got a whole top travel tips in 2 minutes video at voyagereport.com. Just click on the destinations tab. So Diane, what made you want to start Our Edventures?
Well, it's kind of funny how we got involved in that. I used to be a history and a language arts teacher to middle schoolers. And so this was a long time ago before we had kids. And I started because we were traveling, my husband and I were traveling to some of the places that my sixth graders were learning about, like Athens or Rome. I wanted to be able to share about what we were seeing with them. And so my husband actually is a computer programmer. And so he made a little website that allowed me to upload pictures and put little captions on it. And it's kind of funny because this seems very commonplace now and very ordinary, but actually this was this was way before Facebook and, way before all the social media things that we use now. And so that's sort of how I got into travel writing. But then nothing really became of it. And then many years later, when we had kids and I wasn't working anymore and we started traveling quite a bit with our boys, um, we had a lot of friends ask us, so, that trip you took, where did you go? Could you email me the places you stayed and what do you recommend we do? And so I found myself writing these lengthy emails with all of this information. And so I just decided to revisit that whole idea of getting it all up on a website. And anyway, so started doing that a couple years ago. And, it's really a hobby. And I find that it's become as much for me as it is for other people because I love to remember and capture the details of what we've experienced.
And the concept here is that your journey doesn't have to be sitting on a beach for 5 days doing nothing, that you can really learn and make sure that your kids learn as well while you're away from home.
Absolutely. I really believe that traveling is the best classroom. And it's one thing to read about places, but it's completely a different thing to experience things firsthand. And, whether it's, learning or discovering something new about animals or something with geology or the people or the cultures. I mean, even just languages and food. And it's an amazing education. And I really believe that all travel is educational. It's not, it doesn't become educational when you all of a sudden put a focus toward that. It's everyone's learning every time they take a trip and experience some new part of their own country or new part of the world. But I do believe with a little bit of extra effort, you can enhance the learning experience so much more.
And did you want to start this for your own kids because you didn't want them to be idle on vacation, or did you want them to make sure that the experience was lasting in their memory, or that they became really well-rounded adults? I mean, how did this begin in your own family?
Well, it's probably just me. I can't help myself. Like when it's like I still have that teacher
Right.
mind in me. And so I don't want to just show up at a place and just figure it out as we go. If there's some unique animal to that location or whatever the history may be, I want to know about it. And I just, I think as parents, we want our kids to experience as much as they can, and it's surprising, even places like I'd mentioned Bora Bora earlier, even places like that, there are so many educational opportunities available and people don't really think about that. But French Polynesia has a very interesting history connected to World War II. And you can even see some of the leftover spaces there where they were prepared and waiting. There's and of course the plant life and the animal life is abundant. And so, it's just wherever we go, I want to know what's the history there. And I see it benefited in my kids. We've been traveling with them since they were very young. In fact, we stopped traveling when they were born because everybody told us you're gonna stop traveling now. You have kids. And so we believed them and we did that for about the first 2 years. But when our oldest was about 2 and our youngest was 9 months old, we just couldn't stand it anymore because we had this wanderlust. And so we packed up our double Graco stroller and sippy cups and diapers because we weren't sure what was going to be available. And we went to Greece for a month. And it was a challenging experience in some ways, but it also opened our eyes to the fact that travel didn't have to change just because we had kids. And so, even from those earliest times, education, I think, has played a part. I think of on a train on our way into Rome to see the Colosseum, I'm reading You Wouldn't Want to Be a Gladiator with my, at the time, 5-year-old, And so no matter what age they're at, now the boys are older. So I've got a tween and a teen. And so, their capacity for learning and their interest has really grown over the years. And I'm really pleased with, how much they do care about what they're seeing.
I think you get the Parent of the Day award here at the Voyage Report. I mean, it does take extra effort, but it seems as though you have found that the extra effort pays off.
It does. I think it really does. Yeah. And it's not always perfect. Of course there's complaints or, oh, do we have to read this? Or, I have no interest in this museum and I'm ready to go. So that happens. It totally happens.
Well, it happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Listeners, you can find Our Adventures at ouradventures.com or on social media, of course, on Facebook at Our Adventures, on Instagram at Our Travel Adventures, and on Twitter and Pinterest at Diane Savolka. That's Dianne, S as in Sam, I, V as in Victor, ULKA. So take us through this process that you go through. I know a lot of parents probably right now want to know, when you decide on a destination for your family, how do you go about starting to research that destination and turn it into a learning opportunity for your family?
Okay, well, one of the things that we like to do is we keep a bucket list, and we have this huge wall map. We got involved in the homeschool community years ago before we started traveling. Well, not before we started traveling, before we started the school years, we were already traveling. And so we just didn't think that a traditional school schedule was going to work for us. And in our area, there's a nice, it's a public school, but it's a charter school with an emphasis on independent study. And so anyhow, so we kind of set up a little classroom in our house. And we've continued with that. We have kind of a hybrid. So the boys go to school a couple days a week and they are home a couple days a week when we're home. When we're traveling, the school is very flexible with us on attendance. So anyhow, that's what works for us. But back to the bucket list, we set up a little classroom in our house. And so we thought, well, the first thing we need is a big wall map of the world.
Of course.
So we found this great map on Amazon that is like sort of went on like wallpaper, and it took up the entire wall. And that has just become an invaluable resource anytime we are reading about a place and we're just curious where that's at, or it's just nice to see this huge thing, and it towers over us. It's this large thing. And so we like to keep a bucket list, and we like to put little stickies up there or little Post-its, and people have in our family their name on a Post-it and they'll put it up there, and this is a place that they're interested in going. And so then at that point we just sort of keep our eyes open. We look and see what's on sale. That's exactly why we're going to Iceland in a couple weeks, because we saw a great sale, and it was on our list. It wasn't at the top of our list, but things kind of fluctuate depending on what's available and where we can find a good deal. I love to get Travel Zoo's weekly deals there. We rely on TripAdvisor and we use Airbnb quite a bit. We also follow other family travel bloggers. I love Instagram for inspiration. It's amazing the places that your eyes can be opened up to that you didn't even know existed. And each year we try to visit a couple of national parks and explore an area of the United States that we haven't seen. We always try to include a beach or an island vacation of some sort, and then we try to pick something international too. So just kind of depends. We're not scheduled out a year in advance or anything like that. We just kind of take it as we go and see what happens.
Well, that's exactly how I plan my travel. I don't have $5,000 and 2 weeks to go anywhere, so I just keep watching for those low airfares, which are amazing lately.
Yes.
And that determines where I'm going to go. I know on that whole list of where you find your deals, I know you forgot to say voyagereport.com/deals
Yes,
for our running
you.
feed. Yes, no problem. And the other thing I love, Diane, is that in this age of smartphones and technology, that you still have an old-fashioned map on the wall for destinations. I love that.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's any substitute for that. And it's what's amazing about it is to be able to see the whole world at once. Because so many of our devices, you're zeroed in on a particular place, and don't get me wrong, they are invaluable, and I cannot even believe how much technology has changed travel and made it so much easier. I think about those early trips where we were navigating our way through the Cotswolds with a paper map, and it's like, how in the world did we do that? It's so easy now with technology. But I think there is no replacement for a big physical map. And actually, I just ordered a driving map of Iceland last night because I did read that the navigation can be and internet can be kind of sketchy when you get away from the capital.
Yeah, I would definitely bring a map if I were you. Now, you've been to lots of destinations with your sons. I was looking on your website, which is just an absolute wealth of knowledge. Croatia, Slovenia, Hungary, England, Italy, as well as throughout the United States. What kind of environment or location do you think provides the best learning? I mean, do you find one of those bustling, charming old European cities or a place like Utah National Parks to be the most stimulating for kids?
Well, I really can't say one over the other because every travel experience is an educational opportunity, no matter what. For our family, we have really found that what works best for us is really anything that involves nature. So our boys love to be outside, and they are so much more comfortable in the country than they are in a city. And so, as a parent, I want to, provide those opportunities for them. So even on this, you mentioned Slovenia and Croatia. We did a month-long road trip back in May and June of this year. We started in Munich, where we picked up our car, and then we just started driving. Of course, it was all planned out. It wasn't random. But we spent about a week in Switzerland, and then we went through northern Italy, and we hit places that are definitely off the grid, but really fit our family's personality well. So we stayed on some farms up in the South Tyrol area, very close to Austria. Slovenia was amazing, and Croatia amazing again. And I think some of the best experiences we had were just those outdoor interacting with animals and interacting with nature. Someone had asked us when we got home, well, they'd asked the boys, what was one of your favorites? Like, how do you even pick? What's your favorite on, such a long trip and so many experiences? And it was funny to hear them say, this one day we were on the island of Korčula in Croatia, and we rented a boat. We rented the fastest, biggest boat they would allow us without a boat license. And it turned out it wasn't very big or very fast, but it was so much fun. So we packed a picnic. We went to a little bait and tackle shop and bought some live bait. My teenager always travels with his fishing pole, no matter where we go. And so we set out for the day, and we had a map. The place that had rented us the boat gave us a map of surrounding islands, and we just went and explored. And
Island
for
hopping.
the boys, yes, for the boys to be able to get off the boat and go and explore a little island that is completely uninhabited. I mean, it was just like, Robinson Crusoe. They were in heaven. So, and when we were up in the northern section of Italy, just the hiking and so that's really, for us, that's been our thing. I know a lot of families love to go to theme parks, and I'm not against theme parks, but it doesn't really match our interests. And I do think that if kids only see the inside of a theme park, I think they're really missing out on what the world has to offer. So my personal opinion is to get out and explore as much as possible, whether it's in a city or in the country. I just think there's so much to see.
Listeners, a bit later on, we're going to ask Diane for her top travel tips and tricks for both the frequent and infrequent traveler, so keep listening for that. And listeners, you're going to want to hear this next bit from Diane. Diane, your website, this is fascinating, provides free PDF journal pages, including for a family trip to Europe. Tell us about these free downloads.
Yeah. So, coming from the teacher standpoint, and personally being a journaler as well, it's something that I've encouraged my boys to do from the very, very beginning. And I think, I think what's really great about travel journals is they are a way to document special memories, reflections of places you see or people you meet. I like to record funny things that happen, that we might not remember down the road, but are such treasures to be able to go back and read about at a later time. Drawings, or even saving memorabilia, ticket stubs, or collecting postcards or whatever. So over the years, we've done that a lot of different ways, and some of it's been tied into requirements with school regarding writing and different things. And, if you're traveling with kids and you're going to be missing school, ask your teachers if you could substitute an assignment that they're going to miss for a travel journal. And I have found that teachers are all into that. They love the idea of their students being able to come back to the classroom after returning from a trip and share with their classmates what they saw through pictures and through writing. So one of the very first travel journals that we started when the boys were still very young were our national park journals. And we still have the same journal. We still add to them every year. And it's really fun because they love to go back and look. So the very first national park that they visited was the Grand Canyon. And I think they were 3 and 5. So, of course, there was not any good writing that was happening there, but I did ask them to dictate to me what their favorite thing was. So I wrote what they said, and then they drew a picture, and they get so tickled to go back and see their pictures that they drew of the Grand Canyon at 3 years old. It's cute and funny. But then as we have progressed over the years, their drawings get more complicated, and I wouldn't really consider either of them great artists. It's not really their love or their passion, but of course their ability has improved, and even their ability to reflect on what they enjoyed about that site. So we have these travel journals, and for national parks, and every year when we visit new ones, they add a page to those, and those are fun keepsakes. I do have all of the Europe pages there, their PDF pages, and I have actually, since I posted those early this summer, I've actually received emails from families planning trips to Europe that requested countries. Would it be possible for you to add, we're going to this country, and you
Wow.
don't have that particular one? And I said, sure, I'd love to. So, it took me a few minutes, and I've added a few. So I started just with the countries that we were visiting this summer, but have added since then because of other families' requests. And then I have to say, my absolute favorite travel journals for kids are the ones on the website. I call them perspective journals. And these are really fun for younger kids. And the idea here is that you're taking a special stuffed animal, or I've got another one on there with a Lego figure, but it's a meaningful item to your child, and they're taking that item along on the trip so that they can experience it. And then what's fun is with the journal, your kids get to write from that stuffed animal's perspective. So, for example, we were going to Europe. My older son was 6, and he wanted to take this stuffed animal chameleon with him by the name of Spike. And so I knew that my 6-year-old wasn't going to be particularly excited about writing every day about what he was seeing. And so if he was writing from Spike's perspective, it just made the whole thing a little bit more fun. So we would take pictures with Spike, in various places. And then at the end of the day, my son would write, today I got to see this, and everything was from the perspective of his stuffed animal. I will say, if you decide to do something like that, maybe pick a stuffed animal that's not too big, or that your child wouldn't be completely devastated if it got lost along the way. And that did happen to us once. We still joke about a stuffed lizard that is somewhere in Hawaii along a hiking path, not by a waterfall. And we've made up funny stories about how he's he jumped out of the backpack on purpose because he just wanted a different life. But um,
I'm sure there's a
anyway.
wanted poster or reward for that lizard right now, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then when my younger son was in fourth grade, and in California, we do California history for fourth graders. We did this really fun road trip where we went all the way up through Gold Country. We went up to Sacramento and then over to San Francisco and then over to the Missions. And so we had fun with a Lego figure. He put together a little Lego figure that kind of looked like a little guy that might be panning for gold, and he gave him the name Buckshot Bill. And Buckshot Bill is in all these great pictures, there with the Golden Gate Bridge behind him. They're panning for gold right in Coloma where gold was first discovered. And those pictures were just fun for him to take. He took them with his own iPod, and then we printed them out. And I've got pages for those there too. And so, for his fourth grade California history trip, and really what he was learning in history. It was just so fun for him to be able to put that together in a journal, and that's all there on the website as well. So just a lot of fun.
All these memories flooding back. I grew up in California, and I can remember in fourth grade making one of the missions. A little model of it with my dad. Well, let's be honest, my dad's probably listening, so I'll just confess that he did most of it. But I definitely remember the fourth grade history.
Oh, yes. And what materials did you use?
Oh, gosh. I remember we used the toothpaste for the river. We put a little river out in front, and it was a lot of fun. Now, in those journals, I noticed, and I wanted to ask you about this, there are specific questions that you ask kids. For example, what is the exchange rate, or historical figures, or key exports for a country that they're visiting? Why is it important, do you think, for kids to know that level of detail?
Well, I think it really depends on the age of the kids. For the older kids, I think those are great things to know, especially, if they are going to, let's say, have their currency of their own to be able to spend on souvenirs. It's great for them to understand those things. As the kids have gotten older, we've encouraged them to participate in that. So we will, whatever allowance they have that they're taking along to be able to spend on their own, we like to convert that for them as soon as they get there, and for them to have some understanding of what they're spending and how that relates to the American dollar. And then same thing with the historical figures. There, you can have such a greater appreciation for what you're seeing if you understand who was there. I mentioned earlier Korchula. We were delighted to find out before we had traveled there that Korchula actually boasts Marco Polo's birthplace. Now, of course, the people of Venice will argue that point, but the people there in Korchula, Croatia, will say they have evidence that Marco Polo was born there and lived there for the first couple years of his life. So they have his birthplace. It's a museum. You can go, and what a great opportunity to pull books out and to read and to understand. And it gives you, it just opens up a whole new level of travel when you're in that museum and you're visiting, to know that, or to know that this is a person who was there. And same with our trip coming up to Iceland. We have studied Leif Erikson in the past, but we will brush up, and for all of us, and for me included, I want to get the most out of what I'm seeing, and and I don't need to know everything. It's really, it's an overview. I like a good amount of information without going overboard, enough to really appreciate what you're seeing.
Exactly. And listeners, not only are there the journals that you can download, but also sample itineraries, including 5 steps to planning a historical road trip. And one, Diane, I really enjoyed reading about. It's a perfect 3-day summer itinerary to Beaver Creek, Colorado. So not only can parents have these journals for their kids, but also you provide itineraries.
Yeah. I kind of, it depends on where we go and what we do. And I often don't know what I'm going to write about until I'm there and we're experiencing that. And oftentimes on the way home, I'll think about, if I were a person who were considering going to this location, would I want to know, the top places to visit, the top educational opportunities in that location or a day-by-day itinerary. So it kind of fluctuates in different things. I also really try to have single day excursions. I call it field trips near and far, and a lot of those have been in California because that's our home. But when we go to visit relatives in different parts of the country, and we might visit a museum or I love living history programs, of course. And so I will often write about those too. So it's not even necessarily a whole trip or a whole vacation, but it's a single location that's a point of interest that's great for the family.
Let's talk about getting to these destinations and these adventures. You mentioned in one of your blog posts recently that you keep getting asked about flying on a low-cost carrier with your family. We hear all about these fees and everything, and is the fare really too low, too good to be true? And I think this one was Frontier Airlines. So why don't you let our listeners know what your experience was with these ultra-low fares, and would you do it again?
Well, I am doing it again
Oh,
because
there you go.
that's what attracted us to Iceland. So Frontier Airlines was our first experience with a low cost carrier, and we just couldn't pass up the deal because we found $85 round trip from San Diego to Denver, and we had this
Wow.
trip planned for Vail and Beaver Creek, and so when all the other airlines were significantly higher, 3 times as much, we just decided, you know what, let's give it a try and let's see what this is like. And so I will say that with these low cost carriers, you want to be very careful that you know exactly what to expect going in because the hidden fees will kill you if you are not prepared. For example, the whole baggage thing is crazy. And, so we're flying WOW Airlines to Iceland in a couple of weeks. And, we'll see what that's like, especially with a longer flight. But the baggage thing can really get you. And if you are planning to bring along baggage that you may normally, it's going to put you right back up into that price range with the other airlines. And then it really doesn't make it worth it. So on the Frontier one, for example, what we did to continue that cost savings is we noticed that it was actually, they seem to incentivize you to check a bag rather than try to do carry-ons. And typically our go-to travel now is everyone just has their own carry-on and we just do carry-on, and that's worked really well for us. I mean, I really pride myself in being we don't bring a lot of extra, and I like to do Airbnbs so we have access to laundry and all of that. But when we just did our 30-day road trip in Europe, we just each had a carry-on and a backpack, and that was it. And
I love that. I love
I
that.
like, yeah, I never wish I'd brought more. I always wish I had brought less.
Wow.
So, but anyway, so for this recent trip to Colorado, we realized that would actually cost us more money for each of us to have our rolling carry-on. That was going to be more costly than just one big duffel bag that we could check. And so we used our packing cubes, which I love. Every member in our family has their own color, and that's really great for young kids where they're maybe not going to carry their own suitcases or using these budget airlines. So my packing cubes are red, my husband's are gray, the boys have blue and green. We put our items in there. They can all be stuffed in a big duffel bag together. And then when we arrive at our destination, we just pass out everybody's cubes and they can put them in their own space, put them in drawers or whatever. And
So that's interesting. So everybody doesn't have a different bag. Just to save money and space, you all put everybody's things in one large suitcase.
yes, and we don't always do that anymore. We did that a lot when the boys were young because they were not strong enough to, carry their own stuff. Um, but I'm finding now again that it's working really well with these budget airlines. And so we're going to do the same thing when we fly to Iceland because it's cheaper to do one big bag than it is for everybody to do their smaller individual bags.
Right. Well, and we have a post at voyagereport.com, why I never check a bag. And this is a key part of that. You want to be flexible, save money and whatnot. So then the key with the fees then here on low-cost carriers is that you either pay when you book or don't pay at all because it doubles as soon as you get to the airport, right?
That's right. And, it's difficult to try to figure out like, okay, how much are we going to need, especially when you're having to make that decision when you're actually booking your fare. So, we're going to find out this next one. I mean, Iceland's a little bit more complicated than going to Denver to the Rocky Mountains. So, we're hopefully we chose right, and we'll know in a couple of weeks. But I hate to spend more money than we need to. So we're going to rely on. They do allow you your personal item, which is a backpack. I've already gotten out the tape measure and measured, and they're a maximum of 22 pounds. So we will definitely be wearing our hiking boots, wearing our jackets. And and then we've chosen to stay at places that do have washers and dryers. So if our clothes get wet, which I'm sure they're going to, we have the ability to dry them. And so we'll see how it goes. But to me, that kind of stuff is kind of like a game. It's sort of like a challenge, and I like to try to beat the system. And I never, even when we're doing a road trip in Europe, I never want to carry around and lug around stuff that we don't need. There's just no reason to have these great big suitcases that are in and out of cars or on and off trains or however you choose to travel. I'd say less is always better.
Well, and that's a great tip, especially if you have somewhere where you can wash your clothes, because even if you're gone for 2 weeks, you don't need 2 weeks worth of shirts or underwear. The locals aren't going to know that you wore the same thing 11 days ago. Just bring enough for 4 or 5 days, and you can always do laundry. So your ultimate verdict then is you would fly, and you are flying, a low-cost carrier again.
I am, and we really loved Frontier Airlines. We were prepared for no food. We were prepared for the fact that the seats didn't recline or that there was no entertainment on board. But, when you know those things going into it, you just plan accordingly. Now, with this longer haul flight, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out differently as far as comfort goes, because there's a big difference between a flight that's slightly under 2 hours and a flight that's between 8 and 9 hours. So,
right.
So ask me again next month, and I'll tell you, how I feel about that. But I am actually happy to be trying these out, because the amazing airfare deals that are available right now are really something. And I think that it makes travel accessible to everyone. And why not give it a try? And I have a friend who just booked, I believe it's on Norwegian, but a round trip ticket from LA to Florence in November for under $500. And so why not? If it makes it available to be able to go and see these amazing places, why not? Let's give it a try.
Absolutely. In fact, one of our most recent deal alerts to our premium subscribers, I think it was 262 round trip from the West Coast to Hong Kong in Asia. I mean, it was just insane. It's just a wonderful opportunity for not just families, but everybody who wants to lower the financial barrier to travel. Listeners, it's time for Diane to reveal her secrets to successful travel. She's already given us a lot of tips and tricks, and I know she's got more up her sleeve. She has a whole tab on her website about travel tips. So, Diane, what are your top tips, both for those who travel a lot and those who travel very little, but perhaps are thinking about taking advantage of these low-cost fares and going somewhere soon?
Well, for people traveling with family, I would say the number one tip that I have is probably to lower your expectations. Don't expect everything to go perfectly, but it's so worth it. It is so worth the extra work or the extra challenge that's involved with that. And really slow down. I think it's much better to see less. To seek out those unique places, find playgrounds, enjoy picnics, really sit at the sidewalk cafe and enjoy, watching things go by. And so really slowing down, seeing less, enjoying what you have in front of you, and kind of a mentality is we'll be back someday, I feel like has gone a long way to help us really enjoy what we're seeing. For my family, trying to cram everything possibly in that we could see in a location doesn't go well, and it leaves everyone frustrated and just kind of overwhelmed and exhausted. So really slowing down and just taking it all in. And for the frequent traveler, I would encourage you to really mix it up. If you find yourself going to the same kinds of places, try to get out of a rut and maybe take advantage of some of these great travel deals that are available and go to a place that you've always thought, I wonder if I could do that, or I've always thought about that. If it's available, I'd say go for it, because life is short, and you're never going to regret what you did do. It's always what you didn't do, later
Right.
on when you're not able to. And another thing that's a fun thing for frequent travelers to consider is if you have people in your life that you're compatible with, whether they're family members or not, consider doing some joint traveling. We've done a bit of that in the last couple of years, and it's really added a fun dimension onto our travels. I love traveling with our parents. I find that our boys get just an added great experience of spending more quality time with their grandparents as well. And so I would say, mix it up a bit. And sometimes it's fun to have, as the boys have gotten older too, we've also allowed them to invite friends to come along on trips. And that's been fun for them as well. For the infrequent traveler, I would say plan something immediately and just go for it. Whether you want to plan a road trip in your own state or something that takes you farther from home, just go for it. And especially if you're talking about traveling with kids, I would say, I heard someone say a couple years ago, you have 18 summers with them. How are you going to spend it? And when you think of it that way, you just think, there's no time to lose. Before you know it, they're going to be off and gone, and you want to make as many memories with them as possible when you have them.
You mentioned traveling with your parents. We just did a story a couple weeks ago about that multi-generational travel is way up for 2017, especially on cruises and whatnot. So I think that you're probably part of this leading edge of this trend of families traveling together, multi-generational.
Yes, I've written about it for several different publications because of our experience. And we started that about 2.5 years ago. My husband's parents were wanting to go and experience Europe, and it coincided with a time that we were planning to go too. And so we went together, and I will tell you what, that just opened my eyes up to something brand new, because the memories, not just the memories of the amazing things that we got to see and experience, but I love the memories of my boys in the way back of our van. We were road tripping through Hungary and through the Czech Republic, and I love those memories of the boys sitting in the way back of the van with Grandpa and him telling stories to them as we were going along. Or I love that he took an interest in, just they were photographing car logos, foreign car logos, and so Grandpa got real involved in that. And then a year later, we went to French Polynesia with my parents. Those memories, they're priceless, really. And, I think we won't always have our parents with us. And I love the idea of my boys getting to spend quality time with our parents while they're still physically able to go around and see and experience and do.
I love that. Absolutely. Those memories that will stay with you and your family forever. Listeners, you can find Our Adventures at ouradventures.com, or, of course, on social media, on Facebook at Our Adventures, on Instagram at Our Travel Adventures, Twitter and Pinterest at Diane Sivulka, DianneSivulka. Diane Sivulka is the founder of Our Adventures, a website full of educational tips for family travel. I loved it, Diane. Thank you so much for sharing everything you know, spoken like a true teacher.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
And we can't wait to hear how your next adventure goes. Listeners, have you made a trip educational for your kids? Will you try it now that you've listened to Diane and heard her tips? Let us know by rating this podcast, giving us a review, and sharing it on social media. We have guests every week talking about travel news and trends, so be sure to subscribe to our podcast. We'd sure appreciate your review. It helps bring more awareness to our journalism and original content. And if you have an idea for a future guest on our podcast, please reach out at voyagereport.com and let us know. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Mark Albert. Bon voyage.
You've been listening to the Voyage Report podcast. Get the scoop on travel at voyagereport.com.